Welcome to the Driven Moms Answering Adversity interview series, stories of success through setbacks from Mom Elevated. Together, we can shine a light on how normal challenges and struggles are, along with how we can overcome and rise above them. And today we have Jenn to share her story with us today. I am so excited to dive into this. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and get us started with just a little brief overview about you.
Absolutely, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me today. I am so excited to be here to meet your audience and just to share a little bit about my story. So I am 37 years old and I'm expecting my third in almost 3 years. So my youngest will be 3 on July 12th, and this one is due July 16th. So it'll be a wild ride. And then I also have 2 stepkids that are 9 and 11. And that has been probably one of my biggest adventures, is stepping into being a step parent. And I did a lot of this while I was being split by the border. So I met my husband online in 2018, which was really fun. I was in Canada, in just an hour outside of Vancouver, BC, and my husband was 10 minutes south of the border. And so my girlfriend convinced me to do online dating. She said, okay, just give it a go and open yourselves up to the US. So I paid like triple the cost for 30 days. And on the last day, my husband liked one of my photos, and his profile was very direct. It was like divorced, 2 kids, active in my church, like very point blank. He has some other things that he would share about, but I don't remember those moments that are like barefoot in the kitchen or something. I'm like, no, that didn't happen. But yeah, so we ended up getting married in 2019, expecting that I was going to be able to get my green card, because I was at a place, I was in my 30s and I was like, I'm single, I have no kids, and I was really active in doing missions work and traveling to third world countries. And so
Amazing.
I said, okay, you know what? If this is going to be my life, like, I don't want to be just in Canada. I want to go and give. And so to meet my husband and then move to the US was like not what I expected at all. But here we are, officially 3 years in March 15th. I have now been here for 3 years as a permanent resident, which has been so much fun. And my green card was delayed because of 2020. So that was a journey. If you follow 2020 and the Canadian-US border change, we were one of those park couples up on the West Coast that were hanging out at Peace Arch Park. So that was a lot of fun. And throughout this time, we decided we were going to try during my visits. I would have to come down. I was because of the Canada rules during 2020, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks if we traveled. And
Right.
so I would come down, I hung out here for 2 weeks, and then I would travel back, and then I would have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So essentially, I was grateful that I could work online. I am a pre and postnatal personal trainer. At this time, I was just a personal trainer to the general public. I trained anyone and everyone. But I had actually started 2 years before my business doing online training, because I had had a client reach out to me who moved from Vancouver to Toronto and said, hey, I still want to work with you. Can we make this work? So when 2020 hit, I wasn't alerted at all that I could take my business online, which I was so grateful for. And so then being able to have my relationship across the border, we ended up getting pregnant. And I was like, we don't know if I'm going to be still in Canada, if we can even cross the border to be together. But it all worked out. And I was able to come down to the States at 20 weeks pregnant. And yeah, it's just been a fun journey. And in the last 3 years, we
Sounds
now,
like a whirlwind in the
yeah,
past.
yes. So I thought I would give you a little bit of my story, and then you can tell me, what are the most interesting parts and how did you get through these? And so in the last 3 years, my husband and I have also, so I pivoted my training business. I moved down in March of 2021. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go work at Starbucks. I'm going to do a job where I don't have to think, because I've been a personal trainer and I taught dance for over 15 years. And I thought, you know what, I don't want a job where I have to plan and service. But when you are that person and that's what builds you up, you actually can't escape it. So I never went to work to Starbucks, and I ended up in November, 3 months after my daughter was 4 months. I don't know the math. I think it's 4 months after my daughter was born. I launched the Healthy Mom Academy, which is my current personal training business, and specifically working with pregnant and postpartum moms, or those that are trying to get pregnant. And it was because I really saw the divide of like the information out there for staying active and the importance of weight training throughout your pregnancy. And so I just wanted to be there to cheer those mamas on. And so with loading that, my husband and I also purchased a sports shop. So We have now, as of May 2nd, owned that for 2 years as well. That's my husband's baby, hunting, fishing, all those fun things. So we are both in the athletic fitness kind of like to be. I like hiking.
Yeah.
People at the store laugh at me because I don't know anything about fishing or hunting. I have not grown up with any of that. So I like the hunting or the hiking and camping side of our store.
Yeah.
That's where my knowledge is, but I just kind of help behind the scenes there. And so with that, we have our fifth kid due in July, and we are a full, busy, ongoing family that just keeps on moving.
Incredible. What a story. And for all of that to culminate really within like 3, 4 years, five, I guess don't know when it actually started, 20 to 4 years is
Yeah,
so, I had to math too there for a second.
I will be 5 years officially married in November. So we got in,
Wild.
we started dating 2017, it got engaged 2018, got married 2019. And then, yeah.
That is incredible. I also met my husband online, so I appreciate that part of the story and how that went down. I did not envision myself living here. I actually live in the town that was rivals with my town growing up, so it's really, really funny. But man, I love all of that story. How did you go from, okay, what made you decide to even dive into the sports store when you were already successful? I mean, if it's your husband's baby, I imagine it was him being like, "Hey, this is a great opportunity."
Yes,
But
it definitely was him. So he had been a customer at this store, and he was actually kind of in a group that was kind of in an application process of purchasing the business he had been working for. So he had been doing woodworking and creating cabinets and woods. I would not cabinets. He did windows and doors for the rich and famous. So he had a really cool job. He saw really amazing, like he did a lot of amazing work. He created my lovely accent wall for me that I
that
love.
is beautiful.
And so he had kind of already had this like idea of wanting to be an entrepreneur. And then his uncle actually reached out, and it was through a men's ministry. He said, "Hey, like there's a sports shop that's going up for sale up in your neck of the woods. Like, would this be something you're interested in?" And we were going through our immigration, and immigration was not cheap. I had a lawyer that was going through this. So we were going through our immigration. We were separated at the border, and we're like, we are not in a place financially to be able to figure out how to purchase a business.
Yeah.
And but my husband was just like, you know what? I really feel like this is something that we should be going for. And I was like, okay, like let's just, have the conversation. Let's see what they're asking. Let's see what they're looking for and see how it goes. And so we started just kind of taking steps. And I remember one day we went for a walk and I cried. And I was like, I am so scared because I do not know what this looks like. I was like, but I'm trusting that God's going to continue to provide. And if it's going to be a thing, then the doors are going to be open. And so there was a number of different applicants that had applied, but they had chosen us to be it. So it was a retail space that had already been in one family for 57 years. And
Wow.
so we'll actually be celebrating 6 years with it next year, which is really exciting. And we've not only just gained new friends, but also new family. And so we get together with the previous owners, and it's called Dave's Sports Shop. And it's really funny because people say all the time, like, are you guys going to change the name? And my husband's like, if anything, I'm changing my name to Dave's.
Right, right.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
we have a great community in a small town up just south of the border, 10 minutes south of the Canadian border. So it's really close for me to be able to go home. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That is amazing. I can't even like wrap my head around. That is a lot of just faith and believing that that is going to work out and it's going to be great. That's, whew, I kind of got chills. That's fantastic. So how did you then go from that and still, because that is busy enough, I imagine, how do you then continue your business and be like, well, we're gonna like go this route instead of just helping anybody. Now we're gonna go and we're gonna help pre-postnatal and those who are wanting to have kids. Like how did that culminate in that amount of time as well?
Yep. So for me, um, I actually hired a business coach. Um, and I feel like you really need to like interview your coaches a little bit more than I probably did that first time. Um, she had great intentions, she had great questions, but it really didn't give me the strategy I needed to build my business. It did give me the name. It gave me the name that I created, and it gave me like the belief in my myself that I was like, I can make this a thing. Like I still was like, I'm just had my first baby. Do people really trust me? Do I have enough knowledge, right? And I was questioning myself, like, I don't know, like, if like there's so many other people out there. Like, I look at Heidi Powell, like she's one of my like fitness icons, and there's other like different there's another pregnancy and postpartum that shows up on my Instagram all the time, Molly Galbraith. Like, no idea who she is, but I see her on my Instagram all the time, and I'm like, oh, she knows what she's doing. Like, she has it together. Like, I don't need to do it. But the reality is that everybody's going to connect with someone different. And so for me, I did hire that first coach. And then like about a year later, I'm so funny. A year later or just under, I hired another business coach. And I literally hired that business coach through, again, reaching out. So in Bellingham, which is like 20 minutes south of my city, north, south, no, south. And they had a women's entrepreneur. So I had really had this business. I had a name, and the clients that I was still serving did not really fit the pregnancy and postpartum. I mean, some of them were postpartum, but they were like 5, 6, 7 years postpartum, which is fine because they are still postpartum. They're still
Right.
moms and busy and trying to find that workout time. So I joined this entrepreneur, and there was a couple of girls there that I had drawn to, but I didn't really know them, like other than saying hi at breakfast meetings and stuff. And they started sharing on their Instagram about going to Ohio for this business retreat. And I was like, that looks interesting. And I'm like, well, I want to go to Ohio. Like, I love to travel. Molly was probably a year and a half at this point. My husband's like, okay. And I was like, plus it's business, so I can use it for my personal training business, and I can use it for the retail business, whatever strategy I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
So I get on the call with this business coach, and she informs me that you can't just go to that weekend retreat. It's actually a 6-month mastermind.
Oh.
And so, yeah, so it was not just the financial cost was a little more than I was expecting. And I'm a little bit, I can't think of the word right now, but we get on the call and she goes, this is what it is. I said, I'm in, I'm coming. So I did not tell my husband, not highly recommended. He does know this about me. I was like, we're going to make it work. But I did sign up, I did go, and I then worked with that coach, and I still actually am part of her club a year and a half later. And that is where I got the strategy for my business. So even as I've been running my business, I have grown it it's going to be 3 years this November, from just one-to-one training to group training to then also now having locally, I can sell protein healthy bites. So basically they're like protein balls, but you are buying the jar with the dry ingredients. You can gift it to a friend, and then on it is a recipe there with the liquid ingredients like the nut butter, honey, maple syrup, whatever, to make it flavorful. And so that was something that I just went to Ohio in November or October for that retreat. That was an item that came out of that. And then I just got my approval for that like 2 weeks ago.
That's amazing. Well,
So
congratulations for that.
thanks.
That's amazing.
Yes. Um, but in all of that, I would say it's just even my sudden um, decisions that I make of like doing these things, like my husband supporting me and trusting that like this is possible. Like, okay, like I always say to him, like, I don't know how this is gonna happen, but I really feel like this is the right thing. And I do have a really hard time sometimes when he's like, I don't think we should be doing this. Or maybe, he said it a couple times where maybe you should just like leave your training business and just work on the store. And I know deep down, like, I
Yeah.
can't. Like, that's not my heart. Like, my energy and my heart is seeing these women be able to stay active throughout their pregnancy, seeing families be active, out for bike rides, going for walks, like without any hesitations or fears.
I think that's such an important piece to remember too. Like, it is wonderful and amazing that you can get that support from your husband, but even in the times when he is kind of doubtful, and like, that's when you truly know that that's something you love, when you're like, I can't not do it. Like, I appreciate where you're coming from, but that's not possible. And so like, kudos to them for putting up with us, because I'm very similar. I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out. And they just kind of go along for the ride, and most of the time support it and are like, you're amazing. But like the times when they do doubt it, you're like, hmm, nope, I still have to go for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important piece, because so often we hear that you need a support system. And I 100% agree that yes, it is great to have a support system. But above all, like, you have to know that you're gonna keep going, that this is something that you're gonna want, because otherwise it's too easy to give up. There's too many times that something's gonna come up and you're gonna be like, oh, that's it for me. So I think that's a really important piece, and thank you for saying that. I don't think you meant to say it. It just came out, but I appreciate it because it really is, I think, pivotal when people say find your support system. That doesn't mean that your support system is going to 100% back you all the time. They're also there to challenge you, to push you, to like make sure that you're thinking things through and doing all of that. So I love that you stumbled upon that piece of
Yeah. It reminds me, I'll share with your audience a really fun book that I love to read, and it's called There's No Plan B for Your A Game.
Mm.
Have you read that book? Have you heard of it?
No, but that's an amazing
I don't
title.
have it around me. I don't think I know who the author is, but I can send you that information if you want to put it in the notes for your readers or your listeners afterwards.
Yeah.
One of my favorite captions is "You are a player, not a fan." And so you need to know, like, I'm the best personal trainer for pregnant and postpartum moms. Like, this is my job. And so one of the things that it talks about is like, I'm a player, I'm not a fan. So it means that I'm not out tailgating, I'm not having beers before the game, but I'm in it. I'm in this community and continuing to move forward. Like, I truly don't have a plan B. I
Yeah.
truly am like, this is my business. This is who I'm showing up for. You know, there's going to be people, and it's always funny when I do interviews like this. Yes, they're like globally because you're somewhere. I don't know where you are,
I'm
Jessica,
in
but
Wyoming.
oh, okay. Still don't know where that is, but I know it's not on the West Coast. It's
Yeah.
kind of on the West Coast. Is it? Are you still considered West Coast?
Kind of mid. That's a
Okay.
great question. I'm mid. I'm in the Mountain Standard Time, so,
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain
So I
area.
love being able to like globally talk with people in an interview. I've done one with somebody from Australia and things like that, but it always reaches out to my like local community. They're always like, "Hey, like I saw you on this podcast or I saw you interview on this YouTube channel." And I'm like, "That's so cool." And it's because people search like for their categories and things like that. But yeah, so I always just think like there's no plan B, that I'm always going to continue moving forward and I want to. Like I would say if there's any hesitations, like I would pull back and be like, and I do question myself all the time, like, am I giving my children the attention that they deserve? Because they are only going to be these little toddlers for so long. And I can say every day that like I have time and I take in the moments that I have.
Yeah.
And I would say, if anything, I do recognize like at the end of the night, I'm like, oh man, like I have so much work to do. And am I going to do it, or am I going to go to bed so that I can get the good rest and do a better job tomorrow?
Mhm.
And really just filtering it through that way, like family first and then coming through my business, but seeing that fruit through my business because of putting my family first and how I grow with them.
Oh, whew. Yes, absolutely. 100%. I agree with that. I think, yes, that's something I think I've learned along. I was a virtual assistant for a decade and then switched to the mentorship side of things about 4 years ago. And that's probably the biggest thing is realizing that amidst all of it, they do come first. That's why you started it. That's why you're doing what you're doing. There will be busier times when that shift is going to be there and you're going to have to prioritize a recording first real quick and then you can go, but there's always those pockets of time that you can really make magic happen, and I think that's so nice about having your business. What do you think though is like the biggest adversity that you've answered within all of the craziness that you had happening within that time, that short time
What
span?
I would say, it is being a stepmom. It's learning how to be a blended family. Um, it's fun. I'm so grateful that me and my husband's ex-wife do have a good relationship. We can talk, we can text, we can have communication. We even have those funny comments where we're both like, yep, that's what he does, like whatever. But it is learning how to parent through my stepchildren and figuring out, things are different at mom's house than they are at dad's house. And one of the biggest things that we're finding is my stepson, I see like he just really wants to control things because he is like feeling a little bit back and forth right now of like, okay, like how do I control anything right now?
Yeah.
And so it's learning how to parent through that. Um, and still like we go to sports events, we do birthdays together, like these kind of things. We're working together, and yet there's still those differences. And so it is daily, like in the evening, reminding my husband and I, like, we're on the same team, even if we've just had a crazy nighttime and Molly's, my toddler's screaming, and Oliver's like in the bed but doesn't want to go to sleep. And then my stepdaughter's reading quietly and just kind of watches it all happen, you know. And it's just knowing that we're on the same team regardless and cheering each other on and not allowing that friction that's happening with us and the children to continue to go on. And then also reminding ourselves, like, be really great with communication, which can be tough. But we do have very open communication as best possible with the children and with his ex-wife. But I would say in amongst that, there has been lots of like, you know, there's been moments with my social media where she hasn't appreciated things that I have done, or she feels like I have shared things that weren't my place to share, or I've said something incorrectly, which was never my intention, of course. And so it's trying to navigate that through building a business. So, sometimes people say, like, how's your stepkids doing? Do you still have stepkids? Like, because we haven't seen them, and so they will kind of pop on in the background, but they're at the age now where I have to respect them. Like, what do you want to be? And sometimes they surprise me, especially because the little ones. So sometimes I'll be taking photos or fun videos with the little ones, and they'll be like, oh, I want to be part of it. And I'll just say, like, just so you know, I'm going to make a reel with this or whatever, so that they have that option. But yeah, that would be like navigating my business and our family through that type of adversity has been one of the biggest challenges. And yeah.
Yeah, I could see how that would be really difficult. I mean, even I have a 13-year-old and he also I think people sometimes think that he's a figment of my imagination because he also, at this moment in time, does not like to be in pictures and photos. Once in a while, I can get it, and I'm like, can we at least just have like a group photo? And he'll be in the group ones because he can, hide in the background a little and still be seen. But yeah, that's the beauty of it is you get to let them choose. So I don't know. Yeah, that would put just an extra layer of then I guess complication where you're like, okay, do I need to ask permission here? Where do I need to draw that line? What is, and then how much do you need to worry about that? Like, because that's going to be
Well,
another thing too. Like, ultimately, is it something that you just have to say, the fallout is what it is? Or, that's an interesting, I never thought about it in that perspective with,
yeah. So for me, I think that's where like your personal growth comes into play, and knowing your boundaries and knowing, like, recently I went on a trip to Mexico with some girlfriends, and I felt like it was a little bit of a constant battle, like a constant challenge of like just like little kind of things, little nitpicky things. And I'm like, "Ugh." But for me, I'm just like, I don't care. Like,
yeah,
I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. Like, oh, you sure posted a lot of videos this morning because I had gone to the gym before they were awake. Like, just little comments like that, right?
yeah.
And I could really let that bother me and pull me away from doing what I'm doing. But I know my sharing on Instagram, my workouts, what I'm eating, what I'm doing really has an effect on those that are following me. They do want to know my recipes. They do want to see how I can work out and what I'm doing, right? And so I can't allow their comments. And so that's the same thing, is like, I take everything with a grain of salt, but know like my boundaries and try to be really respectful. And there's definitely moments where I've caught myself been like, oh, maybe I did step over the boundaries and say something I shouldn't have said, or things like that.
But
So
that's also really important. Another personal development thing is being able to allow yourself to make mistakes, but then like apologize for it, recognize them and be like, oh, whoa, okay, yeah, okay. I can
it's the
look
most
back.
freeing thing, because then you don't carry it. Like, I feel like I like have to like I take a deep breath and I'm like, oh, I don't want to send this text, or I don't want to make this phone call because I'm taking ownership. It's uncomfortable, but it's in those moments that actually make it more comfortable. Like, I'll never
Right.
forget the first time someone's like, you should go live and talk about this on Instagram. And I'm like, oh, like, I don't know, like I might say the wrong thing. And now, like, the more you do it, it's like the more comfortable you get with it, the more normal it is. And I think too, for having younger kids, like them seeing you take ownership of those mistakes or having those hard conversations is helping them grow too.
Absolutely. I was just talking to somebody earlier about how I let them call me out on things. Like I give them permission to help correct me because we're all learning together. We're all figuring it out. So I don't mind that conversation because I mean, obviously, if they say it rudely, we're going to have a conversation of how we can maybe tactfully say certain things. But I feel like when you have that open communication, it does allow for not only your own growth, but for them to grow and to see that it's okay to make those mistakes and be human
Yeah.
and be people and figure things out as you go. And like my youngest is hilarious. She is a boss for sure. I don't know what she's going to do, but it's going to be big things. She's already convinced that she's going to be the cool aunt. She's not going to have any kids, and her sister's going to have all the kids, and she's going to go and clean brother's house and sister's house, but she's not going to charge them for it because she doesn't need to. I was
That's
like, this is going to be good. But like just seeing how much more, I don't know, how much more I learned in parenting from my son to my youngest. I tell him all the time, I'm real sorry, but thank you for allowing me to learn and being the guinea pig. Because boy, oh boy. But it is such a wild ride, I think, in any capacity, but having that extra added layer of a whole other family. And I have like my sister doesn't have any kids, but had a stepdaughter, and seeing they also get along really well with the other mom, and seeing how it can work really beautifully, and then seeing other families where it's so disconnected and so disjointed, or how long it can take them to finally work things out. A big piece of it really is just that, like, allowing mistakes to happen and growing together instead, and admitting when you messed up instead of just so much blame can happen often. So I think that's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
In that same line, then, what do you think it is about entrepreneurs specifically that makes us continue on, learn that personal development, continue through the challenges without giving up when time get tough, or, say, we're just gonna do the retail store. That's gonna be
Yep.
fine.
This is where you're going to get my healthy habits conversation, because I think, taking the time for yourself. So when we're running, like even this morning, I caught myself, like, my kids went to daycare, my husband took them to the babysitters, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to get dressed. I'm not going to shower. I'm just going to sit on the couch, get on my computer and work. And it was like the most life-giving thing, because I was doing my entrepreneurship of what I love, my business, pouring into my clients, emailing my like email list, and telling them like what exciting things are happening, sharing a new like healthy bites recipe. And so I love that. And then being able to also know where are my boundaries of like, where am I spending my time? So like today was a big reflection for me of like, hey, guess what? I've been running go, go, go for a long time, still getting my workouts in, but it's been like push, 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 where I'm like, I like these slower mornings. And so I make sure that if I'm driving, so I have to take my stepdaughter to dance twice a week, and it's about a 20-minute drive. So I always put on one of Ed Milet's 20-minute podcasts, because he is my like favorite. I would love to be able to meet him in real life. It's unreal. But I love his, like, I find so much value from what he shares in his podcast, learning from his guests, all the different things. And I've just like, and he highly always talks about like achieving and the importance of like having faith, whatever that faith looks like. It doesn't need to be in God. It could be in the universe or whatever that is for you, but you need to have that belief higher than yourself. Because otherwise, on our days where we're feeling exhausted and burnt out, and like I say, there's nights where I go to sleep and I'm like, I have work to do, but I don't want to. Like, I could stay in that slumber the next day and be like, you know what? I'm just gonna, excuse me, I'm just gonna ignore that, client email, or I'll get them their program the next 2 days because they're okay. They're not really gonna do it anyways. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
They really just want the session with me. They don't want, and so I can start to tell myself all these stories and lies. So it's really important that I make time for myself. And for me, I just so believe in like movement, and I do it with my kids. So like if they're having a tantrum, I have to think about myself too. Like if I'm having a tantrum, if I'm feeling anxious or frustrated or like not making movement in what I'm working on or trying to get done, like I have to go outside for a walk. Like I love running. So I've always been a runner. And so I'll try to go outside for a walk. If the kids are having the tantrum, like take them outside, give them their bikes, and just let them try to roam on their bikes. Yesterday, for the first time, Molly, she'll be 3 in July, she rode her bike by herself. And she was like, look at mommy, I'm doing it. And I was like, oh, this is so good. And I could be inside really frustrated that like the house is a disaster and there's a pile of laundry to be done, and I still have work to be doing at the end of the night. But in this moment, like, and that's where I said, like, these moments with our children are fleeting, and having those little bursts of bubble time, because then when I came back in, once we put the kids to bed, I was able to say to my husband, like, give me 30 minutes. And I just dived in, and the creative flows were coming, and I felt energized. So yeah, so for an entrepreneurship, I think, and the big thing I always talk about is community, finding people around you who are doing the same thing you are, because they're going to be your biggest cheerleaders.
Same thing,
Um,
really.
yes, like finding those two girls that I saw in this entrepreneurial breakfast, like they're still friends today. Like one of them is an amazing photographer and the other one is actually a virtual assistant. And I actually use her for our retail store to do all my social media for that because that's not where my energy needs to be spent.
Yeah.
And knowing those boundaries. So I love once a month, there's this like breakfast entrepreneurial thing where the women come together and they bring in different speakers and talk on different topics, but it helps with collaboration as well.
Hmm. I think that's really important, not only the community, but how you can tap into that community once you have it, because it is like, I think that's why when everybody says you need to network, that's really why. You need that community. You need that like Rolodex of people so that when you know what you need, you have the people on hand that you already trust, that you already can go to, or that can tell you who to go to because you do trust them. And that is so important. And you can't do it all yourself. You want to, but you can't do it all yourself. So I love that you're already tapping into them and being like, that's not where my energy is going. And that's really how you create those pockets of time that allow you to take that moment away and go outside and watch her magically ride her bike all of a sudden. Cause it's amazing too to be able to witness that like light bulb moment when they figure something like that out and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You've been working on it for so long."
Yes.
And it really does. That does not only energize you, but I feel like it just resets you in a way so that you can be more productive because it gets you out of that methodical thinking that you were already doing prior to that.
Yep.
And so you're allowed to you allow yourself space to think so that you can sit down and actually be productive when you need to be.
Yeah. And one of the things I just wanted to touch on is like talking about our like personal lives and business is like talking about the successes that we achieve. And so like as you're talking about the bike riding, I'm also reminded like today we're on day 3 of no diapers, no pull-ups. Woohoo! So like that's an achievement. That's fun to celebrate, right? And so that's my personal life celebration. But when my Healthy Bites license came out that I can start to create this product, that was a celebration that I did with my business community, right? And it's those communities coming together and being able to build and celebrate and knowing like when I went to Mexico, like the boundaries of like, hey, when I come home, probably going to put a little bit of space between these relationships because maybe they're not as strong as I thought they were. Maybe they're not something that I need to pour into my life because I felt bad. I felt coming back, I was more exhausted than I went on my trip. And so really feeding it. And so that's where it is, having that supportive husband or having that mom. Like personally, I don't have, my family is not that close. We're not that close of a family, but my husband's family is that close family. Like his parents know everything that's happening all the time. Like I try, and that's one of my challenges actually this week was my daughter's been calling me my best friend. She's like, "You're my best friend." And I said, "Okay." I said, "You're always going to be my best friend, right? Like you're never going to give up on that." But then I reflected and realized, how do I talk about my mom and what's our relationship? Because I wouldn't necessarily say my mom is my best friend. Like I would say she's probably grown me the most and challenged me the most because I've often felt like I'm the person that's causing the problems. If I went to her in high school and was like, "Oh, this is what happened," it's like, "Well, what did you do?" Right? And so that was a lot of personal growth I've had to work through. And so I don't necessarily want to take my kids to go see my parents, and they don't really necessarily care to come down here. Like it's just how they've grown up and it's what we're doing. So, but I'm challenging myself now to be like, hey, if Molly wants to be my best friend, I need to know that like when she's 9 and 10 and like my stepkid's age, she's not going to question me on like, well, if you want me to be your best friend, why don't you your best friend with your mom? Or what's, those relationships and how the impact of what we're doing is impacting those that are looking up to us.
Oh,
Okay.
that got
That
deep
just
real
came
fast.
out.
I know.
I, I was really thinking about success and knowing that, and I did not mean to go into my mother's story, but
No, I think that's so amazing though. And really I think about often how and how we can us deep thinkers really get far down into things like that. Like I can think many years ahead and be like, "Well, I hope that my kids still invite me over when they need something or, they come to me," because that's always been my mom. But I also think about like the impact of just our own childhood on ourselves now and how much we either have to break cycles or fix them or continue them, depending on, I guess, if you don't want to dive into that personal development piece of it. But it is such an impactful thing. And I am close with my mom, but there's a lot that I don't necessarily agree with, or that I will say, I'm not you. So I'm gonna do things differently, and that's gotta be okay. And it's been a big, like, kudos to her for being 70 and still learning and still being willing to grow and learn, because I can't imagine like being that far in your life and still have like, yeah, I feel like you have to be a lifelong learner at that point in time, just because coming up across some things that maybe you've believed your entire life, and all of a sudden somebody, your daughter, is coming to you and saying, that doesn't mean that that's right. And you're
Yeah.
like, excuse me, but for 70 years it has been. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, but it can change.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine how, I don't know, disjointed that must feel,
Yeah.
but it is really interesting to try to think about that from all the different angles and all the different perspectives, and then be like, whoa, I am challenging a lot of things that she's believed for a lot of time. And again, kudos to her for actually trying to take the time to take that in and do that and allow me to do the same.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think it's really fascinating to just see the impact of our childhood into our adulthood, into our own kids, and how that's going to impact their kids even later on. So,
Yeah, when you're talking about that, it reminds me of a comment. Sometimes my husband will say, well, I find myself actually doing things that my mom does all the time. And my husband will be like, well, that's Debbie Newmeyer. And I'm like, I know. And I would never have said it. Or I'll say things to my client like, now I can't think of it. My mom always said, like, there's like two taglines my mom said. I can't think of them at the moment, but she would say, and I catch myself saying them into my clients, like just as like a throw out, like it's not a negative comment, it's just like a funny comment. I can't remember what it was, but anyways, and I just catch my mom saying things like my mom says, which I always think like, I don't want to be like my mom, but then there is good qualities, even though like I feel like I'm pulling it from it. But
right.
like parenting, there's times where my husband's like, well, this is how I grew up and it worked for me. And I'm like, but did it really? Or, like,
Or
because
did
I'm
you just deal with
like,
it?
so I grew up from a different like perspective, and this is how I think and trying to go through those conversations too, like breaking it down. So, but that
Yeah,
could be a whole different
that
podcast
could be
series.
a whole podcast by
Parenting.
itself. I actually have on my bookshelf, I have a saying, suck it up, buttercup, because that's what I grew up with. But I keep it up there as a reminder that that's not really how I believe you need to grow. I don't think you need to always suck it up, buttercup. Sometimes, for sure, but like that's not my mantra of life by any means anymore. But that is how we grew up for sure. Like it didn't matter what was going on. You just suck it up and get through it because it's not that bad. It's fine. You're not dying. You're not bleeding. It's okay.
That's
And
exactly.
so I keep it as a reminder now to just be like, you see, that's so funny because no.
Yeah.
But so then at that point, what overall takeaway or lesson do you think that other mompreneurs can use specifically from your experience, from all of this that you have now done and are doing and will be doing in July? What is something that they can take away an overall lesson?
Community. Community is my number one thing. I could not do anything without having people around me that are cheering for me, that are part of me, that I can call on and say, hey, I have this last minute thing. Can I drop the kids off to you? Or, in that perspective, but also in the collaboration perspective of like, hey, like, right now for the retail store, we reached out to two other local businesses to try and do a Mother's Day giveaway, right? Like, we're going to do a fishing pole, but one of them's a spa, so they're going to give a spa thing. Something the other company's like homemade toffee, and so it's like a fun little thing. And so it's having and these are people I've met through being connected to local entrepreneur businesses. And then of course for our family, like we do attend a church on Sunday, and recently we've switched churches, and that's had a huge impact on our kids' lives of being able to have more friends and get to know people. And again, that they're growing in their faith, but in their being part of a family and not feeling like that we are just on the go all the time, but that we're connected and we have these people around us that want to be part of our family. One of the things I love about going to church is like the older generation and how like loving they are. And so like because I'm part of a mom's group as well, because community is huge. So like what do I think? I have a church community, I have my entrepreneur community, I have my business leadership community, I have, the list goes on. I have a dance community because I was a dance teacher. Yeah, I've been a dance teacher for like ever. So I have that community that I still connect with, and they don't go away. They're still there to support you and cheer for you. And so it's even funny, as I became a pregnant postpartum specific personal trainer, I had moms from that I had their kids teaching dance when they were 3 and now they're like 16 who have reached out to me and been like, hey, like, can I work with you? Or, I'm seeing that you're doing this. And it's all the different connections and stuff, but it's also the support. Like the biggest thing is having, you know, the people that you can call and be like, hey, I need help with this. Do you have an idea about this?
Yeah, I do love that. What do you say to people? Because obviously, if you moved away and you're not really super close with your family, that's a good perspective to tap into and say, well, I don't have that supportive family. How do you create that community? I mean, even if you didn't have the church, you mentioned many other different,
Yeah,
how do you start? How do you start if you don't have that already? Because I feel like that is a really big stopping point for a lot of people where
yeah,
they're like, well, I don't have that. And it's like, well, you can create it, but I think
yes.
they just don't know the steps to take or they don't feel comfortable. So it's that one big leap. But what would you say? What's their first thing they should do to create?
Ideas that came in. Um, yeah. And I would say even 3 years in, I still don't feel like I have the close, like I still don't have my best friend who I could call on and be like, hey, let's hang out, let's go for a walk, like my best friend lives 6 hours away. And so I still don't have those close knit friends, but I definitely have people that I can call on and say, let's go together for a walk. That'll help. And so what I would do, so the reason I joined that entrepreneurship is because I recognized like I have one of my good friends who owns a gym that I used to work for up in Canada. So she's like, I call her my business bestie because her and I can talk all things personal training and business and clients and all that stuff for growth. But I didn't have it close. I needed it closer to me. Like you need something within the walking distance, within the drive that you can get together and say, let's grab a coffee. And so I looked for the entrepreneur thing. And it was another personal trainer that was local here that my husband knew her brother, and she was just like, hey, come for breakfast. And I have not stopped going ever since because I was like, I recognize like she's not been part of there for a while, but I still continued because I recognized how I needed that community. And that was the same with joining the moms group. But I would even say one of the things, and I would say I'm more, growing up, I was very outgoing, and I probably still sound very outgoing because I can be outgoing. But I also am finding that the older I'm getting is like, I kind of want to isolate more. I kind of want to be more of a homebody.
Yeah.
And so finding the balance of getting out of my comfort zone. And so one of the things that I've been doing is just hanging out on our local pages. So in our community, we have like 3 little towns around us, and I'm just on the like little neighbor pages and I'm just seeing what people are posting. And I've actually made a couple of friends just by people posting saying, hey, I want to go for a walk to the park with my kid. And so I always make the joke, like I'll post now offering that because that's how I met somebody, was like by them literally just saying like, hey, I'm taking my kids to Hovander Park. We're going to meet at the boat launch. We're going to walk a mile in. So we get our steps. The kids get to like play at the playground for 20 minutes. And then we'll walk a mile out with their strollers. Like, do you want to come be a part of it? Um, and people have totally responded being like, yeah. And it's not because I'm a personal trainer. Well, I'm a personal trainer and that's why I want my steps, but I really want to build the community in it. And if I can support moms in that community as well through conversation, through that walking, through resources that I have available, because then I can point them to say, hey, like, go listen to this podcast. Like, I know this person who's talking exactly about that or hosted a guest about this. Or, I'm speaking at a summit in a couple weeks that I've already pre-recorded, and it's talking about pelvic floor health and specifically like to exercise and stuff. So like if somebody's postpartum and they're dealing with that, like, hey, here's a great resource. Because I do find that the average mom is not the entrepreneurial mindset and does not know what's going on in the entrepreneurial world. And so they're looking to grab at those resources and straws. And that's why I'm sure you have it as well on your email list. You're always giving resources where people can go because they might not see it like we do. And so I always like to give, some of my favorite books to read for personal growth, a recipe for somebody to try, things like that, and then outgoing resources. So like, hey, listen to this podcast, or, this is something you can join.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's fantastic and really great resources that you've now given other people to create their community. I think it's really about, I love that you said that it's about learning how to step out of your comfort zone in a way that works for you. Like it's got to feel okay, and you're gonna have to be able to do it somewhat consistently so that then it starts to feel normal and not so mm, icky. I don't even know how else to describe it.
Say that not everyone's for everyone. I'll never forget. I was in my 20s before I found out that somebody didn't like me. Like, I went through all high school thinking I was a lovable person because I was friends with like everybody, right? Like I said, I was
Yep.
open. So I was an athlete, but I also was cool with the popular people, even though I didn't really do what they did, but I still got to hang around. I was really a loser of the popular group. That's probably why they kept me around. But um, and so I like coming to a place now where it's like, I probably from the online dating world too, actually being okay with rejection or
Yeah.
realizing like going on that first date and how uncomfortable it is and being like, this doesn't feel good, not going to meet with that person again. Like, be okay with that. Like, do kind of like online dating with friends, go for coffee with people online, go for a walk with someone, and maybe the conversation's great. And other times you might be like, that person really drained me. Like, I'm not going to want to spend time with them again, and just put up your boundaries. And unfortunately, you're busy, you've got other things going, or you might be able to direct them to something else that's happening in the community that you know about.
I love that. That's such a great way. And I like to say, just because you're not my cup of tea doesn't mean you're not going to be somebody else's best friend. Like that, you could be fantastic for somebody else. And same thing for me. I'm not going to be great for you necessarily, but I might be great for somebody else. So like it's a really great learning curve and perspective to see that. But how then can people get in your space if they want to learn more about you, work with you, or just soak up all of the things that you share?
Yes. Well, my business is the healthymom.academy on Instagram, so you can come follow me there. But I do post mostly on my personal Instagram, which is Jenn.Lathrop. So we can drop those handles there for you. And then you can visit my website, which is jennlathrop.com. Super simple, just my name. But you can email me through there. You can get to my Instagram through there. You can join. I have a private podcast. So there's lots of fun resources there. If you jump on my email list, join the podcast, the mini podcast. I send out once a month at least email resources, some that I talked about today, recipes, all those fun things. And then I would also like to give your audience a gift, if that's okay with you, Jessica.
Always.
On my website, I have created something called the 7 days of pregnancy workouts. And so for 7 days, you're going to be able to download a free PDF where you're getting a workout program that's safe throughout any trimester of your pregnancy. You'll get a little blurb of a delicious smoothie recipe, whether it's for helping with nausea or just to help bring your nutrients up. And then the last thing you're getting is just like a little blurb of something that I experienced throughout my pregnancy that's going to help encourage you along on your journey. And so it's usually a $97 offer, but I'm going to give you guys a free code, which is Moms Elevated, and you guys can go and download that anytime.
I wish I had that resource for any of my three kids. Amazing. That's fantastic. I might tap into it just to see what it is and what
Yes,
all is
please
in
do.
there. I
My
don't plan
goal is
on
just
having
to
any
see
more,
moms moving, and
right?
I'm not going to ask you to do anything crazy. Sometimes on Instagram, you'll see me do crazy things throughout my pregnancy, but it's also because I want to show you like what's possible, like what is possible throughout your pregnancy. Because one of my biggest things is navigating pregnancy in the non-fearful way through workouts. Because so often people are told to work out, their doctors are saying you should do these things, but don't do any core exercises. But actually, there's lots of core exercises you can be doing. Today, I'm sharing a client doing a core exercise that most people would not try because they would be concerned about having a sore back. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So I share lots of fun things for exercising throughout my email, my website. So yeah, you can come connect with me there. Jenn Lathrop,
Fascinating.
Healthy
I for
Mom
sure will.
Academy.
Yeah, I for sure will connect on there. Well, and the core, wouldn't that, this is just a question from me personally, wouldn't some core work actually help with delivery and some
Absolutely.
cases?
And
Okay.
there's a difference between your deep core, which is the back wall abs, and your turtle shell, which is so you're actually hugging the baby, right?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite exercises to do is hugging your baby, and it's really just a breath exercise, and it's one of the biggest core exercises you can help for labor and delivery and recovery as well. So it helps lift the pelvic floor, but it also helps tighten that core so that you're actually making sure that you're tucking that pelvic floor underneath and you're not feeling that lower back pain.
Incredible. Dude, I really wish I had that for my last. She was almost almost 10 pounds, so she was a big old baby. That would have been lovely. Everybody needs to tap into you, okay? So like this
Jessica.
is incredible. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It has been not only eye-opening for me, but also I hope and I know that it's going to be helping so many out there just with all the things. There's so much that you have to offer everyone you help. So I appreciate that you came and joined us today.
I had so much fun with our conversations. I'm like sitting here thinking like I want to invite you onto my Instagram and I want to like talk more because I feel like we shouldn't end, but we do need to end because
Yeah.
people have lives to do. I'm glad I hope that your audience was listening to us while they were mopping or cleaning or doing the laundry because for me, I always find like that's another tip is putting in a podcast while you're doing the chores, like habit stacking. It's one of my big things is like to have that personal growth while you're doing something else. It's like, oh, it's refreshing. It's not like as exhausting as I feel like it can be. So,
Ooh, I love that. Energize while you work
yeah.
instead of whistle. I like it. For those of you out there facing your own adversity, know that you're not alone. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we share these inspirational stories of other women because you're not alone. We have all gone through it. And Jen, your willingness to be open about it is very much appreciated and needed in this space as well. So thank you for sharing that to help us know we're not alone. Everybody out there, when you need an extra hand or mind for brainstorming during your mompreneur journey, we would also love to work with you through the Mom Elevated Society, which now includes the quarterly Gift Yourself Grace Reflection Program. Super excited to finally include that in there. You will find monthly check-ins for goal setting and assessing, and so much more for both your business and your mom life. And until next time, keep shooting for the stars.